GOSO is get outside, stay outside. It's a little bit of our mantra, a little bit of our mission. It's like what I really want is for people to ditch the screens, stick to technology. All the reasons that we love going outside, like the reasons that people drive four-wheel drive vehicles, 4x4s or adventure bikes or going hikes, is because they want to connect with nature. And so that idea of like get outside, stay outside is it kind of heightens our whole like lived experience. Like get out in nature, hang out with your friends, cook good food, sit on the beach and enjoy the beautiful surroundings, or sit on like a mountain pass, wherever it may be, and just slow down, enjoy a good meal. A little bit like the slow food movement philosophy of like chill out, enjoy a good meal. Life goes by too fast to eat dehydrated food.
Warning. The 4x4 Canada podcast contains discussion about exploring mountains, camping beside lakes, and enjoying the outdoors. Guests also talk about jumping race trucks side by side, racing 1,000 horsepower rigs across mud pits, and jumping monster trucks over stacks of buses. None of this is for the faint of heart. The 4x4 Canada podcast is not responsible for bringing out your inner adrenaline junkie or making you want to get out there and explore the back roads from coast to coast. The 4x4 Canada podcast is not responsible for broken parts due to jumping your vehicle, hitting mud poles too hard, crossing deep streams, and doing other dumb shit. However, we will take credit for inspiring you to explore mountain tops, spend quality time outdoors with your friends, or meeting new like-minded people, and most importantly of all, following your dreams.
Hey everybody, it's Wes here. Welcome to the 4x4 Canada podcast.
And I'm your co-host, Trisha. Welcome.
And I'm Brent from GOSO Cookware.
Brent, I am so excited to have you here. As we mentioned offline, I've been following you right from day one, from the survey that you usually send out, 2-3 years ago. And now we're seeing your product is going to be shipping in the next month or two. So super excited about this. Yeah, really looking forward to talking to you about the journey to get there. Before we get into it, I do want to quickly mention to our listeners, this is going to be the last week that our survey is up on our website at 4x4 Canada podcast. And as I mentioned earlier in other episodes, as well as on Instagram and such, that we're looking to get a little bit of feedback on how we can make your listening experience better. And like I say, Trisha and I have a couple ideas. I want to work a little bit more on the sound. And we also want to hear from you, our listeners, as to what you want to listen to, what kind of guests you want to hear. And so many different genres in the 4x4 world. Let us know if you want to talk more about the overlanding or the off-road racing, monster trucks, all that stuff. But yeah, if you can go check out the survey, it's at the top of the page at 4x4canadapodcast.com. And briefly want to touch base. Last week we had Mountains and Memories from Instagram. Wonderful couple, and they go all over the place in their ZR2, all through the Canadian Rockies. And even though they are from Saskatchewan, we don't hold that against them. They love the mountains, so they're out to the mountains every time they can get. So next week, we got Adventures Unexpected. This is a couple that has been all over. They spent some time down in Georgia traveling. They just got back from a trip into Alaska and up to Tuktoyaktuk. They're from Ontario. So to go to Tuktoyaktuk from Ontario, that's a long haul. And had a great conversation with them about their trip, and as well as some of the events that they organize. They organize a few overlanding community events every year over in Ontario. Another great conversation coming up next week. After that, we're going to follow that up with and I'm totally drawing a blank, I believe it's the O'Brien family on YouTube. And they are in Atlin, BC, which is basically the middle of nowhere, about 50 miles east of the middle of nowhere. I guess the closest city would actually be Skagway, Alaska, looking at the map. And so they live in Atlin and they travel all over the Yukon and Northwest Territories. They did a huge snowmobile expedition last year, which is on their YouTube channel at Bryant. And they did that in the middle of winter. So it's pretty cool. You got to check it out. But also they own Atlin Coffee Company. You get this, Brent. They make coffee and they're all off grid. So
Wait,
yeah, they're solar powered.
roasting.
Roasting.
Cool.
Yeah. And the best part is they work together with a whiskey company not too far away from them. So they take all the barrels where the whiskey has been sitting, and then they roast their beans in the barrels, and they have a whiskey coffee.
Man, well, listen, now we're talking. That's awesome.
Yeah, they say they can't
Some of
keep
that.
that one in stock. I think they've got 5 or 6 different versions of coffee, And I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't really know much about the different roasts and different things like that. But yeah, they say the whiskey one, they can't keep it in stock.
Sounds cool.
That is awesome. Yeah, and I love the fact they're totally off grid too. That's going to be another great conversation coming up in a couple weeks here as well too. But in the meantime, let's flip it back to Brent from GOSO. Welcome to the podcast, Brent.
Oh, thanks. I'm super stoked to be here. It's so fun to like my folks, and I love talking about GOSO Cookware. And I love talking about cooking and adventures and outdoor and all that stuff. So I'm pretty excited.
Oh, it's going to be a really great conversation. I've really been getting into cooking this year when I've been camping. And so I definitely want to talk a little bit about that with you. But before we get too deep into it, let's give a shout out to where our listeners can find you, both your website and your social media.
Yeah, if you're looking to find us on the web, we're at GOSO Cookware. It's GOSO Cookware, COKWARE.com. And on Instagram, at GOSO.cookware. Those are our main spots.
I want to get into the GOSO in a second, but let's roll it back to who Brent is.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. History.
Yeah, a little bit of history. And then I know some of the other stuff they're into. And I think a lot of our listeners can relate to Brent, the outdoor enthusiast.
And yeah, for sure.
So I know you grew up in Ontario.
Yeah, I grew up in Southern Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And my parents actually immigrated to Canada. And that being immigrants to Canada, they were trying to find what to do to fit in and what's some cheap fun. And it looks like canoe trips and going camping, it was that. And so we did a lot of camping, a lot of canoe tripping, and stuff like that as a kid. And I loved it. That was as soon as I got my driver's license, I had this old Jeep. And the first thing I did was me and my 3 friends put a canoe on the roof and drove up to Algonquin Park. That was pure freedom, man. It was and it's actually funny because I had this picture from that camping trip, and must have been almost 17. And the one thing we all had were these huge steaks. And even back then, it was obvious that camping and cooking, I loved it. And I forgot about it, but it was this picture of me and my best friend with the steaks the size of our face. And cooked them over the fire, they were so good, and we just had the best time. But yeah, so being in the outdoors has always been kind of part of my life. I was lucky enough that the house we lived in backed onto a conservation area, and so spent a lot of time there playing as a kid and walking in the forest, the dog, my dad, and stuff like that, and canoe trips and hiking trips. And I ended up getting a degree actually in outdoor recreation from Lakehead University in Thunder Bay. And degree in outdoor rec. And that led me into some outdoor leadership stuff. So I led trips for youth and young adults and stuff like that. And that's still something I dabble in from time to time. But yeah, that kind of started my love of sharing the outdoors with other people and just being a little more of a steward, I think. And that I did that for a little while. And then as it goes, you get a little restless. And I hadn't really been in the mountain. And so I wanted to come out west and moved out to the Kootenays, the West Kootenays of British Columbia. So now I live in a little town called Nelson, BC. And my other love aside from cooking is snowboarding. And so that's what kind of brought me here. And yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that. But in the summertime, I love riding dual sport bikes, adventure bikes, and stuff like that. And so that was actually another thing I learned from my family. My dad's really into dual sport and adventure bikes as well. Started doing that and gone on a couple trips, dual sport trips or adventure trips. And Wes, as we were discussing before, British Columbia is just the mecca for exploration of deserted back roads and mining roads and logging roads. But I love living in a small town. Literally in 10 minutes, I'll be in the middle of nowhere. And in 45 minutes, I'm at an alpine lake it's an alpine lake. Then up in the mountains, be back home before time to go to sleep. And that kind of led me to going on adventure trips and dual sport trips. Was my love of food and love of eating never really stopped. And I always was perplexed as to you go on a trip. I had a bigger bike at the time. I had 650 and I had these massive panniers and we'd go on trips. I'd stop at a gas station and never there's a grocery store in town, but then you'd go and eat camp food. I'm eating oatmeal and freeze-dried mashed potatoes. And we were in a town 3 hours ago. A cooler bag should be able to keep food cold. So I was on this personal mission to be okay, just because I'm riding a motorcycle doesn't mean I have to eat bad food. And that was where I started to know the world of being rolled up to camp and cook. And that was where that started. And I actually started a YouTube channel, a little bit of a COVID project. It was called ADV Eats. And it was on that premise that was all right, people can learn to cook food while they ride their adventure motorcycles. And so I didn't get very far. I think I had like six uploads or something like that. But it was fun. It was a good practice of, okay, being like thinking creatively around food. What can I like feasibly take for 3 hours in a cooler bag? It'd still be delicious and not give me food poisoning. It had some great heat and it was super fun. And that's where the birth of GOSO was. I posted something on Instagram a little while ago of like cooking a smash burger. And so I had some beef, and that was actually the impetus. I had this frying pan from a big outdoor products manufacturer. It was Teflon coated, it was aluminum, and it had a handle that was like kind of B grade. And I wanted to make a smash burger. And to get the smash burger, I needed to heat the pan up. It like burnt all the Teflon. The pan warped. It also bent at some point because I dropped my bike because I'm riding a dual sport bike. And so the pan bent. And then the handle rubbed the Teflon coating off. And I was like, this is the best frying pan I could buy. And I'm like, I have nothing but complaints about it. And so like in that moment, I was like, there's gotta be something else out there. I searched and searched. And I didn't really find what I was looking for. I found like component, like cast iron pan would be awesome besides the fact that it's made of cast iron, being heavy and bulky and all that stuff. And there's lots of great camp equipment, but it's often based for backpacking. So I was like, I want a really good frying pan. I was like, you know what, like a frying pan is not a big thing. You can take the handle off. And so in my search, I found carbon steel frying pan. And so it's all the great properties of cast iron, but not the heavy weight. And then we designed a handle to work specifically with our frying pan. And the handle, it feels just like a professional quality cookware handle, but it removes completely. There's no mounting hardware or anything like that. So it comes off completely. So you get a super compact cook setup, but it also performs really well. I made dinner on mine tonight, actually. Cook with them inside my house all the time, too.
So what does GOSO mean? I know there's a bit of a background on that.
Yeah, for sure. GOSO is get outside, stay outside. So it's a little bit of our mantra, a little bit of our mission. It's like, what I really want is for people to like ditch the screens, stick to technology, all the reasons that we love going outside, like the reasons that people drive 4-wheel drive vehicles, 4x4s or adventure bikes or going hikes is because they want to connect with nature. I want people to keep doing that. And I think the things in life that bring me the most joy is sharing food with people and sharing food in a beautiful place, having experiences like being in the outdoors. Like a good meal only heightens that. And so, yeah, that idea of get outside, stay outside is that kind of heightens our, our whole like lived experience. Like get out in nature, hang out with your friends, cook good food, like sit on the beach and enjoy the beautiful surroundings. Just sit on like a mountain path, wherever it may be, and just slow down, enjoy a good meal. A little bit like the slow food movement philosophy of chill out, enjoy a good meal. Life goes by too fast to eat dehydrated food.
That's one thing that the overland community is, I've really noticed over the last couple of years is, my God, we love to eat and we love to cook.
Right. What it is, the thing is that people love quality of life, right? Yep. And eating good food, drinking good drink, that's quality of life. Having good coffee, right? All that sort of stuff. And the beauty of it now is that you can get all these you can bring compact pour over coffee makers, and they have like fridges that people can like, oh my gosh, like that's a game changer. A fridge and a freezer. Like we thought a Yeti was a game changer, but holy cow, you can go forever if you have a fridge. Wow. And then with that, you're like, the only thing that's lived, like you can boil water to your heart's content, right? And like, so then you need a lightweight or like a medium weight piece of cookware that packs compactly.
Yeah.
Just to say, not to keep selling, but it's all about the quality of life.
Yeah.
You love to eat.
It's amazing. I was out with Dwayne from Just Jeeping Adventures on YouTube a while ago, and him and his buddy brought a smoker.
Oh, yeah.
Really? You guys are going to, you arrived to camp early and you set it up. And I think they smoked something for 4 hours and it was a brisket. It was just absolutely incredible. And like, how do you actually bring or smoke meat out in the outdoors, camping on top of a mountain, right? Like it
totally
blew my mind.
Yeah. My friend Jordan told me he did the same thing. He had an electric smoker. He's like, dude, I have so much lithium power in this van. Of course I'm going to use some electricity because it comes from the sun. And yeah, you get to camp and you're like, oh, just smoke this meat while we were driving down the road.
It's incredible. Yeah. Yes. Overlanders are huge foodies. I've really noticed that. And I've really been working this year on cooking different foods each time kind of idea. And that's been one of my big goals. And I've gotten away from the craft dinner and sausages kind of thing. So getting back to actually enjoying the foods that I cook and that. So that's something that I've been really pushing for this year. And there's a few things that I've wanted to talk to you about the GOSO Cookware. Now, basically, right now, you've got the frying pans. You've got two different sizes of frying pans.
Yeah, an 8-inch frying pan and a 10-inch frying pan, which are two standard sizes in cookware of frying pan.
So basically, a couple of points I wanted to bring up on it that I think are really key to our listeners. One's that is made from carbon steel, and carbon steel is obviously a lot better than Teflon, and it's a lot lighter than cast iron. But in layman's terms that Trisha and I can understand, what is carbon steel?
Carbon steel is very similar to cast iron, right? So it's a very simple material. It's 99% iron, 99.2% iron, and 0.8% carbon. And it's like when you think of steel, more often than not, like a cold rolled steel, it could be called a carbon steel, depending on the different carbon content, levels of carbon in the steel alloy. It will depend on exactly what it is. But our pans are made of 1008 cold rolled carbon steel. It's a pretty common material. The benefits to that is, like you said, it's a lot lighter than cast iron. It has all of the same positive qualities, right? Like I said, the only things that are in that frying pan is carbon and iron, like kind of the building blocks of life in some way, right? And you need both those things. And there's no coatings or anything else like that. And so it's a very simple material. And the nice thing about that is that you can season it like you would a cast iron pan. So to create that sort of non-stick seasoning, that kind of non-stick layer, you do a process that is called seasoning if you're unfamiliar with cast iron pan. But the way it works is you essentially heat up your pan and you put a very thin layer of oil on it. And it heats to a point where it polymerizes. So it changes the molecular structure and the oil actually bonds to the surface of the pan. And that can be created through seasoning, like intentionally using a paste or an oil to season the pan, but also just naturally as you cook fatty things that have oil in them, the pan will season naturally too. So don't abandon those sausages too quickly, right?
No, it's all good. It's all good. So some of the benefits, like you mentioned, is being that the Teflon scratches easily, you lose your coating, et cetera. And you mentioned that when you were talking earlier about one of the smash burgers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also I think carbon steel, it distributes the heat a bit more evenly, doesn't it, than the Teflon pans?
Yeah, I guess the Teflon pan, like you could take Teflon and coat it onto a carbon steel pan or a stainless pan, and it would distribute the heat fairly well. The nature of carbon steel is that the heat will move very quickly. So if you need to take off the heat, it cools down quickly, it heats quickly, but it does distribute the heat nicely. So ours are 14 gauge, super thick, but it's not very thin that you'll get lots of hot spots. On a standard camp stove, it spreads the frame really nicely. But the nice thing that's different about Teflon, or we can even say just like Teflon's a brand name like Kleenex, right? Like a coated pan with PFAS, something like that, is that once it scratches, it's forever scratched. And that's like the downfall, starts to get ruined. But with a carbon steel pan, a scratch ain't no thing. Like a scratch is really, it's not a big deal because you season it, and usually it's a scratch in your seasoning. The seasoning gets scratched, not a big deal. You keep cooking, you can season it once you're done. It's really not to its detriment if you were to scratch the pan. Even if you do scratch, like you do a big gouge in it, over time you'll fill that with seasoning and stuff like that. It's pretty resilient. That's the nice thing is that's like field serviceable, right? Like you can season it. You don't have to be at home to season it. Like you can fix it while you're in the middle of nowhere. As long as you have a heat source, whether that's a campfire or induction stove or your regular gas stove, you could season your pans anywhere.
And do your pans come pre-seasoned, or is that something that the consumer needs to do?
That's something that the consumer is going to do. Our pans come with an oil coating on them to preserve them in transport. But we also were debating about, okay, do we do the seasoning? Do we not? And the thing we came down to is that it's like everyone's wants to season their pans themselves, and you have to do it, right? Like we could pre-season the pan for you, but if you really want to take care of your pans and you really want to like work with the carbon steel, you're gonna have to season it regularly. And then there's also like an environmental concern that I think for me rings true, in that to season it, we have a huge industrial oven that you heat up to 800 degrees Fahrenheit, and the pans pass through there. So, and if a customer is going to do that anyways at home, it feels really wasteful to fire up this like huge industrial oven to do something that we're going to do that you could do over your camp stove on a fire. And I haven't calculated the carbon footprint of everyone's small oven at home to our large industrial oven, but you and I both know people who are like into the outdoors and they're like pretty autonomous and they love to make sure things are done their way, right? Take that element, you take the people who love carbon steel frying pan, and you're at the pinnacle of don't tell me what to do. I'll deal with my cookware my way.
Yeah, people are very particular.
Totally. And I think it really comes from like a love of what you're doing. It's like any good piece of equipment, right? Like you have to care for it. You don't put oil in your car once and then be like, good to go. Anything that you want to continue to perform, you need to maintain it. And that's kind of part of the process is like loving it and it'll love you back. You got to care for it. And, whether it's your frying pan or your car, or your relationship, like it all needs to work.
Maybe that's why I'm single. So that's an interesting thing to speak of too, because I have cast iron pans that I just started getting into in the last year or so, but some of them are from 50 years ago. And I've got some friends that use 100-year-old cast iron. I've got a friend that he electrolytes or he basically hooks it up and he gets rid of the junk off them and he re-oils them, but he does that as a thing and he resells them. He's got stuff that's from like the late 1800s and stuff like that. So that's something with the carbon steel is going to last long as well. Not like Teflon where you get that scratch and it's basically a throwaway kind of idea. Right? So
that's the one real flaw in my business plan is that I'm selling a product that will probably last a lifetime. Like, as long as you don't lose it, I can safely say, like, this thing, it's indestructible under regular use, even probably under some abuse. Like, it's a pretty sturdy frying pan. And our handle as well, it's designed very simply. So there's literally one pivot. There's 4 parts that make up the entire thing. 2 parts are the handle, a screw, and a wire bail. So it's designed for simplicity. So with that, you're not going to have to replace.
Yeah.
And maybe to my detriment, but I also don't want to make stuff like you get thrown in the landfill. That's the antithesis of being someone who loves the outdoors.
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
So something that I've found with some of my cooking or some things I've read as well is that I know on cast iron, you shouldn't really cook acidic foods like vinegar and tomatoes and stuff like that. Can you do that with the carbon steel or is that not recommended as well?
It has a pretty similar quality. It depends on the strength and like the amount of seasoning you have. Yes, acidic food will affect the seasoning. I pause because I'm like, also do whatever you want. Like the acidic food may affect the seasoning, but you can re-season it. So
exactly.
Someone would say you don't want to stew a tomato sauce because it will get like a slight metallic taste on it. But if you're like finishing something with some vinegar or you're deglazing the pan, if you have a robust seasoning, then it should be good. But yeah, that's like prolonged exposure to acidic food is not the best for it. So if you leave tomato sauce in it for a long period of time or you stew it, then it doesn't really do any favors. But again, you go back to you just re-season it.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. No, that's a very good point.
It's not going to ruin it. It is something to be aware of.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. How do you clean it?
How do you clean it? Similar to cast iron, you could, depending on your health preferences, but you can go from wipe it out with a paper towel. I like to deglaze it with some hot water, wipe out with paper towel. It's pretty good to go. If you want to do a light soaping, that's not a problem either. Because the oil is really bonded to the pan, you're not going to strip off any seasoning with regular old kitchen soap. It's not a big deal. So yeah, and really important though, is you want to dry it, right? You don't want any residual moisture on your pan. So what I always do is clean it. At home, I clean it in the sink. When we're camping, I clean it in my wash bin. Soapy water, I'm okay with it. I rinse the water off. Usually I'll dry it with a towel or I'll just throw it back in my camp stove, put it on high for a minute, let all the water steam off it. And then I know it's dry and then I can pack it away nice and dry. But that would be the detriment to someone's pan is if they pack it away wet, it will develop some rust spots on it, which again, it isn't the end of the world. You can wipe the rust off. You can re-season it, that sort of thing.
One of the things that I would like to mention about the pan portion itself is that the pan is made in the USA out of USA material.
Yeah.
It's not offshore cheap stuff. The pan itself, which is a very critical part of the pan and the handle, but the pan itself is made out of USA steel in the USA.
Yeah. That was something that was really important to me when I was starting this business. Again, like I love to cook. I'm fairly health conscious. I've been cooking with cast iron forever. And I was like, we started sourcing possible factories and we're talking lots of offshore factories. And I asked them like, oh, what's on this pan? They're elusive about it. And I was like, man, this is not the path I would want to cook on. It's like some random piece of steel from just some cheap steel. We are super lucky. I found this factory that's in America. It's been this factory. They've been making cookware. The business has been around since the late 1800s, owned by the same family that still owns the business today. And in the factory where we're making our pans, they've been making cookware in the same place since 1919.
Wow.
That's
awesome.
Yeah. And it's super cool. Like I went to visit the factory last year and we meet people they were telling me there's someone who had retired the week before, had worked there for 45 years. And her son worked there. And I met him. And it's like in a small town and they really build a quality product. And as you said, out of American material. And so with that, I feel really safe in selling it to someone that I was like, we can trace what's in that pan and we know it's not going to be like some fabricated fact sheet that's governed by like real laws and real like regulations. And this is a safe piece of cookware that's built in a reputable factory under excellent working conditions. And like, I can tell you the person's name who operates the press, who like press the frying pan. I can tell you who finishes the frying pan.
So I know that I've compared the carbon steel to cast iron quite a bit here tonight, but cast iron has some definite disadvantages. It's heavy, which your carbon steel is not. And also it has that handle that's attached to it that makes storing it in their bin or wherever you're storing it. It just makes it so hard to store it easily or stack exactly, right? So one of the nice things about the GOSO Cookware is you have a removable handle on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really get caught up in talking about all the carbon steel pan is really awesome. But the handle is the thing that is like actually incredible, because the handle is the thing that like we didn't reinvent the frying pan. So but the handle we created completely from scratch. So I worked with an engineer and product designer who has been working actually in the ski industry for close to 20 years, designing ski products. And we designed this handle specifically to work with our pans. And as I said before, it's a very simple handle in how it functions. And that's very intentional, right? Wanting sustainability is a big part of our business and a part of just being a steward for the world these days. And so we want to design something that would last a long time. And with that, simplicity is key. And as a lot of your listeners know, you're not looking for something overly complicated when you're a couple hundred kilometers in the backcountry. You don't want your frying pan handle to break. So that was a big thing of us. And also for it to really heighten your experience. Because as you said, like a carbon steel frying pan, probably people can imagine it's short, probably 6 inches long. It comes perpendicular off the pan. It's great if you're jacked and you want to lift something up. It's horrible if your pan is full of food and you want to try and pour something out. It's not easy. We designed our handle to work with the pan so that it makes manipulating food, like if you were to saute or flip something, the handle is designed to make that action a lot easier. And also it's large enough that it keeps your hand up and away from the heat source. So it curves up like a quarter pipe type shape. It curves up and away from the cooking surface. And that's really beneficial to keeping your hand away. But then the other part too is that it's really easy to take the handle on and off. So that was my complaint. There's other carbon steel cookware there that has removable handles. There's other cookware that has removable handles. But the way that it mounts, the handle has to be on there permanently. And then you're like, what's the point of having a removable handle if I can't easily take it off? Or if it has like mounting hardware and I can only mount it in one specific plate and it's convoluted to do, right? So our handle, you can mount anywhere. You can easily take it on, put it off, take it off, put it on. In the middle of cooking, you can clamp it on and lock it on there. It's good to go. And the nice part of that is then you only have one handle and you can have one handle for 2 or 3 or 4 pans and you can move them around. And nice too for cooking on the fire, because then you can put the pan on your grill on the grate or even just straight in the coals. And then you don't have to worry about the handle getting hot. You just take it off.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point I hadn't thought about.
And that too with a fire, you know, like the smoke sometimes like you'll like the handle there, but then smoke's building knife. The handle's in your hand, right? You just go to the other side of the campfire and grab it from the side there's no smoke. So you're not really committed to like, just because you left it one place doesn't mean you have to return that. So
that is a great point. One of the things I did notice about the handle is that it's fairly easy. You can use it with just one hand and you can clip and unclip with just one hand. And It's hard for us to explain it audibly. I recommend our listeners go to your website at GOSO Cookware and check out the handle. We can try and describe it, but you're not going to get it because the visual thing is so much easier.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that it was interesting to design it because it looks super simple, but it's actually, there's elements of our design that are actually quite complex. Like getting the handle to mesh with two different size pans, the contact points on the face of the handle, or like where it contacts, is quite convoluted. And there's a lot of really smart design into it of not needing springs, relying on the design of the handle to make the lock, or exactly how the wire bail locks up and down. Went through a couple iterations on that, and just to make it like more and more usable. Yeah, it was a neat design project.
Are you thinking of coming out with a lid?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a lid is one of the next things we'd like to develop. A lid for the big pan and the small pan, that sort of thing. Just trying to figure out exactly, what purpose we want to serve. Again, it could do all the things, but does it need to do all the things? So just trying to figure that out. But yeah, a lid will be coming down the road. Ideally, we're also going to have a 12-inch frying pan that's going to come out sometime. And anyone that's ever manufactured anything before will know that sometime is probably an accurate estimation. And they're also really cool. Like, I haven't said a lot about this, actually. It's not anywhere on the internet, but we've shown some people at different events. But we actually have a griddle pan that is going to be in development. So like a really low-sided frying pan that'd be great for like eggs or pancakes, but we have tortillas, there's all sorts of things. And it's really sweet. It'll actually act as like a lid. It can seal on the 10-inch pan, or you can heat them both up, create like a pea press type thing. So I'm pretty excited for that product, but we're really in the prototyping stage of that. But yeah, it's definitely, those are some things that are coming down the line for sure. And a storage bag is another thing that eventually will.
Let's get this first set of products out there and get the people using it and loving it. And in the background, you can keep on working on that. As I mentioned, I was involved in the startup. I ended up working there for 11 years. I was the first employee, and I do understand a lot of what you're going through in regards to taking it from concept to actually shipping these out in the next couple months. We're going on a 2 or 3 year process, right? So can you maybe walk us through a bit of that process? As I mentioned earlier,
Sure.
I filled out your original survey a couple of years ago, and it's really neat watching it grow from just a thought or a survey in my inbox to something that an actual real product. It's been really neat watching that.
As I said to you before we started, like that sort of stuff, man, just like, I feel so happy that there's people that have like been along the journey. One of the first things I did when I had this idea was some market research. And it's one of those things, some of the other podcasts I listen to, people are like, oh, was it luck or was it hard work that got you where you are? I'm not saying by any means I've achieved anything bigger than, but I do know that I'm incredibly lucky. So starting out, I was like, oh, I have this idea, and I have a neighbor who I knew was in the outdoor industry. He owned a business in the outdoor industry. And I said, oh, can we go for a dog walk? And we own a dog. We live a couple blocks, and we live close to the next place. Goes for a dog walk. I want to ask you some questions. And so we did, and we started chatting. I'm like, I have this idea. I want to do entrepreneurship. I want to start this business in the outdoor world. What do you think of it? And he was like, yeah, okay, that sounds like a cool idea. And he was like, oh, do you know that I coach a business program? I can recommend you if you'd like to get some like more business coaching and in business development. Oh God, Christian, that'd be incredible. So that started one thing. And just like the luck is being in the community I live in, it's crazy how many entrepreneurs are in our community and the structure that is there to support entrepreneurs. So we have a venture acceleration program that's for the West Kootenays that I first enrolled in. There's a 3D or like digital fabrication lab that's attached to one of our local colleges that helps develop product. They're a prototyping facility. So they started helping me out. One thing led to another. In the coaching program is when I started doing some of my market research. And that was probably about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago that we did that. But yeah, and so started doing some market research. And by that, just like really grassroots, sent out a whole bunch of posts on Facebook pages, or was on an expedition portal or ADV Rider if you got some motorcycle riders out there. I posted a lot there just asking people for information, what they thought. I have this idea. Does anyone else think it's a good idea? Like, what I want to solve a problem. If I'm the only one that has it, but if lots of people feel the same way, there could be something here. And then I actually went to Overland Expo in December 2023 to do market research. And I just spent the entire time walking around, like when it was dinner time, walking around to everyone's dinner sites, being like, what are you guys doing? What are you cooking with? And then also walking around the booths and anyone that was food related. And I got to meet some great folks that way, which is really awesome. And just talk and establishing that, okay, like I don't see anything else out there that is similar to this product. There is a hole in the market. And it seems like there would also be people like there's a demand. People want something that works well and lasts, compact, right? That sort of thing. And then another year and a half later, I've been lucky enough I was able to enroll in like accelerator program. We did a big Kickstarter campaign this past summer. So that was like the really big launch of the business. We ran a Kickstarter campaign, launched on July 16th. And we reached our funding goal on Kickstarter by, I think it was 8:00 in the morning on the 16th. We reached our funding goal. And by that night, we had raised over 100,000 Canadian dollars towards the product.
Shit got real.
Really fast. So much so, I swore we'd been hacked. I was like, oh, there's no way that we're I was convinced. I was like, something has gone wrong. Something is really messed up. I'm like, I don't know what it is. But I could also see that there was like people were paying you, like we're giving their credit card information. Like, no one scams you by giving you money. This makes no sense. Yeah. Couldn't figure it. And then it turns out it was real. Yeah, so it was really lucky, man. Like we had a really good product market fit and I spent a lot of time connecting with people before the product launched, both on Instagram and in person. And we're lucky enough that when we closed our campaign, we were overfunded by 1,660%. Past our funding goal. Yeah. So I had about 840 people backed our campaign. And again, are going to very soon get the very first shipment of GOSO Cookware.
That's a huge boost for you because rather than having to go deep into debt or doing it all out of your own pocket and just doing it gradually, this is something that you can get right in. And that's a big boost for you guys for sure.
Yeah, it was really helpful to have that, be able to pay for essentially our first production run and a little bit of extra stock and be able to start the business in a little bit more sustainable way instead of going deeply into the red at the beginning. And to be able to prove the idea that it's like, oh, wait, people really think this is a good idea.
Yeah, totally. So you do have extra stock coming in. So if our listeners do want to purchase something in, say, February or March, you do have extra product coming in besides the Kickstarter stuff, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we don't have a lot though. I only have 400 extra sets of cookware. So we usually sell it in a set of an 8-inch pan and a 10-inch pan and a handle. So yeah, we have enough, and then we're going to restock again in the spring. But yeah, if depending on when the podcast comes out, but it would be probably if it's in February or March, then people will 100% have the ability to order some pans and get ready for spring camping.
It'll be coming out the end of December, so.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So January, you could pre-order it. And then after January, we'll just send it straight.
Yeah. So just go to the website and pre-order it right out the website then.
Yeah. GOSOcookware.com. You can find different product sets and how we've organized it. And if you have any questions around that, I say all the time. It's pretty much it. But you can email me and ask any questions.
You answer all the emails. You're the marketing guy. You're the shipper receiver. You're the
accountant, secretary, everything.
Yeah. That's one thing about a small business. And there's a lot of our listeners are the same way. They have small businesses themselves, whether it's an excavating company or whatever. And there's something about working a small company that you've grown from just a thought in your idea, right?
Obviously, man, it's like such a cool process to be part of. And I talk about it often with my partner. Even if this doesn't work out, I'm super stoked. Like I've learned so much. It's been such a fun journey. The people that I've met along the way, holy cow, like just like super nice, helpful people that are like, everyone's on your team. Everyone's like, go for it, man. Like you can do this. Right? Like people that have been in the trenches, people that are in the trenches with you, people that are like on the sideline being like, man, I would never do that. Like go get them. And it's so nice. It's super cool. And I mentioned before, we're part of this in our community. We have this really amazing organization. It's called CORE. KORE, and it's Kootenay Outdoor Recreation Enterprises. And it's this epic group of outdoor rec gear makers. So it's like small scale independent gear makers. And the community and support that I found in that group of people is wild. And people making really cool things from tents to like outdoor maternity wear to hiking poles, like all sorts of stuff. And you're just like, we're all going down the same river and everyone's in it together. That's another part, just makes it so being outdoors, like the community of people you meet along the way is what makes those experiences rich.
Yeah, I was actually on their website last week,
cool.
and I think I probably got it a link off of your site or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Or maybe when I was doing research, I come across their website. I saw you on there, and then I ended up looking at the rest of the website, and I'm like, oh, this is cool, and then this is cool, and there's so many different things. There's mounts for snowmobiles, right to say maternity wear, to so many different really neat small companies that have some really great ideas on there.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it is just I can think of 4 or 5 people who are entrepreneurs in that group that are like, they had a problem, but the way they wanted to solve their problem, the solution wasn't out there, and so they were like, from like tents to maternity wear to bear spray mounts to, geez Louise, like hang boards, all sorts of stuff. Like it goes on and on. He was bike, super cool.
That's why a lot of entrepreneurs are, though, right? They have a problem and they do research. Nobody else has anything that can fix that problem or fix that problem the way they want to. And then, so, okay, how can I fix this problem? How can I make this better? And that's where a lot of businesses are formed.
And it's nice when a business is formed that way and it's like someone scratching their own itch, in that there's a lot more of authenticity to it versus someone just being like, oh, like, bet you someone will buy this doodad. That it's like, we don't need more fidget spinners, but.
And that makes people a lot more passionate about it, right? Trisha, take a look at David from Sky Tent, how passionate he is of his tents. And he gets so excited that sometimes you can't shut the guy up, but that shows his passion for his product. It's not just because, hey, I can make a sale here. It's, I want to show you how I've fixed these problems that other rooftop tents have. And he just gets so passionate about it. And that's why a lot of these people that are fixing problems with these smaller companies, you can just see the passion that they have for it. Talking to you, you can see your eyes light up when you're talking about your product. So it makes it a little easier to purchase product off somebody that has that kind of passion, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks a lot. And it's fun, man. Like, it's been a fun journey. It's been hard and stressful, but it's fun. And following your dreams, it turns out, is fun and hard and stressful.
There is something that a lot of people in small businesses say is, start your own business. You'll have all this time and all this money. And every small business owner laughs at that, but it's worth the journey for sure. So one of your testers was Dan Grech from the Road Chose Me. This dude is a legend.
Yeah.
He's not Canadian, but he got his start of his trip in Canada. For the folks
he wishes he was Canadian, though.
Isn't his wife Canadian now?
Yeah. They both live in the same town that I live in.
Okay.
And his partner Katie is Canadian.
Yeah, the dude's a legend. Like I say, he's from the Road That Chose Me. And if folks have not heard of Dan Grech, you got to Google him, check him out. He did the Pan American Highway from the top end of Alaska down to the bottom end of Argentina in a Jeep TJ, like a stock Jeep TJ. He slept
in a ground tent.
Exactly, like all the way there. And then he ended up going in a different Jeep around Africa, and now he's gone around Australia. He is actually Australian by birth, but he was here teaching skiing, I think, and decided to do this trek from Alaska to Argentina. But he's gone around Africa, he's gone around Australia, and I don't even know where they're going next, but I know he's working on something.
Yeah, if you follow him on Instagram, they went to Iceland this summer, and his new build is nuts. It's the coolest thing. Like, you gotta see his Instagram or his YouTube. It outlines the build or his Patreon stuff. But it's like literally NASA level engineering. Like, these people from like rocket scientists help him build this Jeep. It's nuts. It's so cool.
Yeah, definitely check him out. But he did an article on your pans on the GOSO Cookware, and it was neat that he had a chance to test some of your prototype stuff. Because if anybody's going to be hard on equipment, it's going to be doing these expeditions where they're cooking in that cookware every single day in all kinds of conditions. How did that work out as good feedback for you guys?
It was great. So Dan and Katie were some of the first people to test the pans on an induction cooktop or induction stove.
Okay.
And that was really helpful just to start to understand how it performs and how it would be different than on a gas stove, that sort of thing. Yeah, they've been all over the place. And what was helpful was just seeing how they cooked with it, different things that they were starting to cook, et cetera, et cetera. And then also like in their space, like they're limited for space in their new build is very small for two big humans and one small human. And the compactness, like how it fit into the big goose gear setup inside there, how it fit into everything was really great to see that too. So that they were the first people to be able to actually test the product in its like use case scenarios or thing like over and over. And they are still in their vehicle right now. So the test continues.
That's, as I mentioned, that somebody like that, where they're using it every day or every second day for a long period of time, and it's getting abused. I'm not saying that they abuse your cookware, just day in, day out.
The cool part about it too is the more you cook with it, the more it gets seasoned and the better it is. Like your old cast iron pans, right? The less seasoning builds up. But also you get to know it a bit better. So, okay, I like exactly need this temperature. Like a critical part of using a cast iron pan successfully is you preheat the pan, right? Like you don't want to just heat it and then throw some stuff in. You got to cook with a little bit of cooking oil or fat, something like that. Following that process, a little bit of learning process. The nice thing about Teflon coated pans, the one benefit is that they're really forgiving. Like nothing will stick to them. So it's really hard to really mess something up. With a carbon steel pan, you need to understand how it works and how it works with your stove and what you're cooking. My perspective, I like that idea. Like iterating, you're learning how to cook, right? And it's personal, right? To how every person likes to cook, that sort of thing. I like to call people who are into outdoors and like 4-wheel drive camping, all this and love to cook. My name for them is being a Michelin stargazer, someone who just loves to be outdoors and loves cooking. And I feel like it sums it up nicely. What we're going for is create more Michelin stargazers out there.
That is beautiful. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah.
What are your favorite meals? What is your go-to, or what is something that you really enjoy? Okay.
Evolved. Yeah, I love the idea of getting really good at some standards. Okay, like how to perfectly pan fry a steak. Or I love egg sandwiches. I love a breakfast sandwich. So that's something like I'm always trying to like iterate and come up with different egg sandwiches, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a fried egg or even scrambled egg is a really good test for a carbon steel pan. So that it's always satisfying. Like they'd be like, oh man, it still works really well. This is amazing. So I love that sort of thing. I've been really getting into like different crispy gnocchi dishes. You know what? This is like the ultimate camp hack. You know when you get those vacuum packed packages of gnocchi? If you don't know, gnocchi is like a little potato sort of pasta. And just frying them in a very little amount of oil or even a dry pan, they get really crispy on the outside and gooey on the inside. And then you can throw some sausage and peas, broccoli, and so some sort of like protein vegetable gnocchi mix. I've been really into that recently.
I've never thought of that for camping.
My gnocchi addiction started with this really simple recipe. I'll tell it to you right now. So all you got to do is you take a package of gnocchi, a little bit of oil or butter in the pan, like really a tablespoon maybe. And then you fry the gnocchi so it's like crispy and brown on like a medium heat. Take it off. And then like a carton of cherry tomatoes, some oil, carton of cherry tomatoes in the pan. Take 2 cloves of garlic and smash them. Don't chop them, just smash them and put them in there too. And then you just want to burst the cherry tomatoes. You burst them so that they like juices run out. They can make a tomatoey sauce. And then you can fold the gnocchi back in there. You've already ripped up some pieces of mozzarella. So you take the ripped up pieces of mozzarella, throw it in there. And you also have already sliced up some basil. And you throw that in there and just mix it all up. And holy cow, like the fresh tomatoes with the gnocchi and obviously basil and mozzarella. And actually, I made this meal off of my motorcycle like 4 or 5 times. And me and my buddies do this annual trip where we go to this epic spot where it's this beautiful big alpine meadow. It's like pretty high elevation. And I've gone there 3 times and cooked the same meal. And it's always incredible. And gnocchi is easy to pack. Cheese is easy to pack. And basil is actually quite easy to pack too. And a carton of tomatoes, such a no-brainer. So good.
I might have to try that on my January trip. So
it's good.
Yeah.
And it's warming. It's not like a light summer meal. Yeah, it's definitely a hearty meal.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'm really excited for the future of GOSO Cookware. But when I say that in the near future, making a frying pan is one thing. But as I said at the beginning, GOSO Cookware is all about getting outside and staying outside, enjoying good meals in the outdoors with your friends, being a Michelin stargazer. And I really want to be able to empower people and help people to do that. If you want to learn to cook, I really want to be able to help you do that. So I'm really stoked to start to build our content out and build up our YouTube channel, pick up my old ADV Eats hat and start to do some more GOSO based content to show people what you can cook with a good frying pan and a camp stove. And like, you can get really creative, and I plan to do so. That's what I'm really looking forward to is building that out and getting creative with cooking and helping people understand exactly like how limitless their cooking can be when they're on the trail.
Yeah, there's so many people that just grab a sausage and throw it on a stick and go from there. But I find so many overlanders are into or even campers are into this whole foodie thing. And I have to admit that it's quite exciting. I've gone out with some friends and go from campsite to campsite, and I don't need to bother cooking sometimes because I just stop at each campsite.
Yeah. Some friends of us, we went on a trip last year just before May long weekend, and we went to a wreck site in close to where we live. And we went to this wreck site. We all showed, there was 14 of us, and we had a potluck, and it was incredible. We realized after that was like the string that attached all of us was that we all loved to eat. And so our backcountry potluck was mind blowing. It was the site attendant ended up walking by and being like, "What is going on here?" And we're like, "Oh, come for some food." And she was like, "This is the best meal I've ever had at the campground." This was insane. It was so fun.
There's something about cooking with a crowd. It's the same thing at home when you have some friends over and the football game might be happening in the TV, but everybody's sitting in the kitchen talking.
Oh yeah.
You're cooking in that. And it's the same thing with when you're cooking outside. It's the campfire's there and your cooking station is fairly close to it. So the campfire and the cooking station also become that focal point of this whole everybody getting together.
Yeah. I think it harkens back to like our basic human need when like what it is to be like human in a tribe and community and stuff like that. And that's always been the thing that like as humans that we always have done together is eat together. And think of like how many humans have gathered around a fire and shared a meal. Like it's a lot of us. And it's cool to think that like we can do an activity now that humans have done forever. And that it's functionally still pretty similar. Like cooking a piece of meat over a fire, like that has not changed a lot in the last 50,000 million years. Now people have great frying pans though, Wes. But it's a really cool way to connect with just what it is to be human, I think, is hanging with your friends outdoors. We've always been doing it. Eating some good food. Like everyone's trying to eat better all the time. Things more delicious.
When you're sitting around the campfire, what drink is in your hand?
That's a good question. Coffee for the first part of the day. And then usually water, to tell you the truth. I don't really drink a lot of alcohol.
That's fair enough.
And sparkling water. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good for you. I've asked that question before, and I've actually finding a lot of responses the same as yours, where people just have a water or something like that. Yeah. And then there's also some folks that are whiskey connoisseurs and stuff like that. So that's part of it too. But yeah, it's really interesting how many people are not really much of a drinker. And then
it really is interesting. It like for me, it changed in COVID. Like you had a choice of do I just start drinking a lot or not? And my partner, she was like, before COVID started, she was like, I'm not going to drink for a little while. And then she was like, this is fun. I'm going to see how long I'm going to do this for. And then COVID hit and we were like, I'm not sure we want to dive deep down that well. And so we just reined her back. And I was like, I never really miss it too much. So well, see how it goes.
There we go.
I do like a beer every once in a while or like a non-alc as well every here and there.
Yeah.
And coffee. I love coffee.
See, I don't get coffee myself. I'm something about it. I love the smell of it. Freshly ground coffee. Absolutely love the smell. But it's not really my thing.
Yeah.
But.
Dirt water, bitter dirt water, some people will call it. Yeah.
I love how not just like our normal like 4x4 community and the overlanders and the normal campers, but like your cookware can be used, like you said, you do it on your adventure tour biking. You can throw that small 8-inch pan, you put in your side pack and go off-roading and do that. And like looking at snowmobilers or even ATVers who do that. Because like the trails here, like we share a lot of our trails with a lot of ATVers. So we sometimes stop and sit around and eat with those guys. They're doing the same thing as us. So it's nice that it's going to hit a lot of other outdoors people. And I like.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have a friend who just went on a big rafting trip. They just did the Grand Canyon on raft. and they took some pans with them. And so I've been talking to them, but I'm really excited to hear how it was for them. Like another great place to use quality cookware. You're not carrying on your back. And same for canoeing and kayaking. Yeah, all sorts of stuff, or like van life. There's a lot of people who just have a compact cooking situation, tiny houses.
Yep.
People live in downtown Toronto.
That's correct. Yeah. The concrete jungle. Yeah.
Horseback riding. There's a lot of people in BC that do.
Horseback. Yeah.
They go out for a few days at a time, and that's another.
Do you guys I don't know if you guys have this out west, but we have a event down here in Toronto, the Outdoorsman's Show.
Mm-hmm. We have versions of it over BC and Canada. Yeah.
That would be just awesome. That would be a very good venue for you to go to.
Yeah, it's definitely in the plans, those sorts of places. Yeah, that's the one disadvantage of where I live in this beautiful small town, but it's also in the middle of nowhere. So that's 8 hours to get anywhere, at least. Besides Kamloops, between 6.
Yeah. But I do have to get out to the West Kootenays this year, so we definitely have to hook up when I get out there. And
100%. Yeah, please let me know when you come by.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, should I ask the last question?
Sure, go for it.
Okay, so our last question is, what should we ask our every guest is what's Canadian like to hear on the 4x4 Canada podcast?
What Canadian? We already talked about Dan Grech and said that he wasn't really Canadian, or he doesn't count. But I was thinking about that, and there's a guy in our town, his name's Craig, and he runs this website called I Think We Missed a Turn. And he has mapped so many back roads and routes in the West Kootenays and is endeavoring to do more like in southern British Columbia, and has all like GPS downloadable map for epic places. Part of me is like, why am I telling you this? Because it's out there if you look for it. But yeah, his stuff is awesome. He's a rad dude. I know him from riding motorcycles in town. But yeah, so he's a cool dude to connect with, I would think.
Yeah, I think that would definitely be a interesting person, just even with the amount of knowledge he's got for the back roads. And I'm sure he's got lots of experiences, right? So lots of stories. And that's one thing that we found even before the podcast, or actually one of the reasons I started the podcast, was because everybody has a story, right? You've got a story how you started. You've got stories about your bike days and stuff like that. But everybody from the elders that we talk to, the racers, we all have stories, and we all love to talk about our stories. So,
yeah, it's true. And again, it's one of those things that like makes life rich, right? Community, friendship, getting to know other people that have different life experiences than you, and learning from that is what makes us human.
So once again, we're talking with Brent from GOSO Cookware, and you can check them out at GOSOCookware.com and GOSO.cookware on Instagram. And you guys got to check out the website, and he's got videos up on there and animations where you can see how the handle works. I think that's a key component to this frying pan, is how well the handle works. Obviously, their carbon steel is a very important part of it, but the handle is a big deal, and you definitely want to check that out and see it for yourself. Like I mentioned, it's hard to explain it verbally, but to go to the website, check out his Instagram. I'm really looking forward to seeing you sharing some of your cooking ideas. I think that's a really great idea. Yeah, really looking.
It'll be a lot of fun. And if your listeners, if you're at any events this summer and GOSO Cookware is going to be there, I'll be there. Come say hi. I love, it's so fun to meet people and make the connection. So yeah, we're in Endeavor. We're going to be in a couple of events in the States, knowing this is 4x4 Canada podcast. Maybe not as applicable, but you're going to do some events as well in BC in the summer.
Cool.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Looking forward to it. So for sure. So once again, Brent, want to thank you for coming on and talking about GOSO Cookware. And it really hits home. Get outside and stay outside.
Man, Wes, thanks so much for the opportunity. Legitimately, this was really fun. It was really nice getting to chat with you guys. Obviously, I love talking about frying pans and my business and all that. But as I've said before, and it's so nice to meet people, and part of this journey that I'm on is just meeting other people that are doing something similar or adjacent, just people in the outdoors, people who like recreating, and prioritize that. If they've got their head going in the right way, they got their head on straight. So they're generally decent people.
I agree 100% with you. The amount of people that Trisha and I have met over the last 2 years It's been incredible, right? So right from our guests right up to attending events and seeing each other on the back roads. And it's been really interesting. You mentioned events, and it's been really interesting going to some of these events, and people are recognizing us, whether we put out a video ahead of time saying, hey, I'm at this event, come say hi, or just recognize us walking by. And it's been so interesting seeing and meeting a lot of our listeners that way.
Yeah. I'm always mind blown when that happens. Being like, what? Me? Remember leading up to my Kickstarter campaign, I ran a lot of ads on Meta to drive people towards my Kickstarter campaign. And it happened to me quite a bit in the town I live in, where people be like, hey, are you the frying pan guy? And I was like, yeah. Bike store, a restaurant, like Bangford. Oh, you from somewhere, the frying pan. Oh, yeah.
That is awesome. That's what I'm going to call you from now, Brent. It's just the frying pan guy.
Frying pan guy. Yeah, it's fun.
That is awesome. Once again, thanks for coming out and joining us tonight, Brent. It's been a blast talking with you.
Yeah, likewise, guys. It's been so much fun. Thank you.